today for our Kind of Different podcast, and we're lucky enough to have Dr. Jahnavi Rao with us. Dr. Rao, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself? We'd love to hear some more.
Good afternoon, Caroline. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Jahnavi Rao, and I identify myself as the DSO Dentist Advocate. And a lot of people ask me, why is that? Because a large part of my own personal life was intimately related to private practice in academia, and yet I am here today advocating for the DSO dentist. And I love sharing this part of my journey because what I found was there are a lot of organizations that support the academic professionals in dentistry, and there's most of organized dentistry that represents the private practitioner and, kind of looks out for them, which is wonderful. But we also shouldn't leave our colleagues that are working in DSOs behind. So I would love to champion that cause, and that's what I am here for. So that's kind of my background. I have been in private practice for over 15 years. I've been in academia for the same amount. And then I took the dive into the DSO space. And I can't tell you how spectacular that experience was, because to work hand in hand with my colleagues and to understand what their challenges were and to basically bridge that gap between the rest of dentistry and the dentists working in DSO, I think that's where I see my calling today.
Fabulous. And I know when we sort of had our warm-up conversation, you really wanted to talk about the dental team's role in this as well. And I know you're, very much not only an advocate, but you have quite the history as, a change agent and a trainer and kind of a visionary mentor from inside of organizations. Would love to hear your comment on that.
So yes, I've worn many hats. I've been a clinician, I've been an academic, a researcher. I'm very excited about technology. But what brings it all together is really the patient, because everything we do as a dentist or as the industry itself, eventually we're doing it so that the impact on the patient is the most effective or the most pleasant. So whether we are using technology to do it or we are using systems and protocols to better ourselves, at the end of the day, it has to make a difference to the people we serve, which is our patients. And along this journey, what I have learned is, irrespective of how good of a clinician you are or how great the technology in your office is, if you don't bond with the patient and if you don't make them comfortable, the rest of it is just a haze. And that's not what we are here to do. We are here to serve people. We are here to ease them, whether it's anxiety or it's pain, we are here to relieve it. So as dentists and as the dental support organizations, if we recognize that and we create systems to address that first, we would be more successful and more impactful in our work.
And so the patient experience, is really important to me and to what I'm doing for work. Can you explain a little bit your take on patient experience? I mean, wearing all of your hats and also as an orthodontist, because I think we've heard, particularly important messages from orthodontists around patient experience.
Absolutely. Dentistry as a profession has evolved rather rapidly in the past, I would say 10 or 15 years, and COVID has only catapulted that progress. So we went from seeing patients and, drill and fill kind of people to technologically advanced, user experience-based types of industry. And orthodontists definitely, I have to say, took the lead on it. And personally, as an orthodontist myself, who was managing a general dental office, it was great to collaborate with general dentists and to share those ideas and to help them and empower them to grow and basically imbibe those qualities. Case in point are your reviews, or in a larger organization, we often refer to it as an NPS score. 20 years ago, nobody looked up Google to find a dentist. Today, we look up health grades and Google and all those internet platforms because the feedback from a stranger actually holds a lot more weight than the feedback from the professional when it comes to choosing your provider. So some things which we never taught in dental school, like how do you actually speak to the patient? How do you have those difficult conversations? How do you train your team to provide that very nice, comforting experience to your patient? All of this was actually not in the cards at that time. So we went through dental school, we learned the skill of dentistry, and we just started practicing. But in my lifetime alone, all of that has changed, and we must adapt and we must continue to grow. So one of the things we can learn from each other is how to handle that patient. What makes a difference to the patient? Is it the fact that you have digital x-rays and your appointments are quick? Or maybe it is the patient's ability to make the appointment online? Or are the patients really looking for that live person and that human connection? It's very important in today's world for a dental professional to recognize what are these factors and how they play in so that they can provide better care to the public and, elevate the industry as they do so.
Right. You had just touched on in that last piece, around virtual care. Can you talk a little bit more about teledentistry, how you think it will fit into the future of dental care, and how we as professionals can, go the extra mile to kind of bond?
Absolutely. COVID changed a lot of things. While many things we would have preferred shouldn't have happened, there were some good things that came out of COVID. And one of those things was Zoom calls, virtual communication, teledentistry. Teledentistry really grew and became even better during the COVID crisis because it filled a void, right? It created a niche for itself where there was a demand, and the demand was met through the telehealth services. While this was wonderful in terms of technology, and a lot of the companies kind of grew the technological platforms, I think where things really mattered was, did we ever train our dentists to work with teledentistry? Because the experience you provide when you meet someone face to face, or when a patient is sitting in the chair and you're having a conversation, is very different compared to a telehealth visit. So I was fortunate enough to be involved in the teledental space even prior to COVID, and the doctors in my offices were all trained in teledentistry. And that really helped us because when COVID happened, we were actually able to not only help the patients in our offices, but we extended that service at no charge to the entire state because we were the only group that was actually trained to do so. And one of the things that people don't realize is when you are on a virtual consult, your time is limited. And there is a specific way that you can be more impactful. And the rules that apply to in-person meetings are not the same as those that apply to telehealth. In teledentistry, everything is much more efficient and shorter. So the provider or the dentist, or let's say even if it's a hygienist, the dental provider has to be trained to be able to get that same information in a shorter amount of time, provide those consultation services while making the patient comfortable. and getting feedback from patients, getting feedback from, the people around you and how that appointment went becomes extremely critical, because that is the first touch point. And if that doesn't go well, then the likelihood of that patient communicating with you or ever coming back to you, definitely, those scores drop, which defeats the purpose of providing a great, a great service if it's not going to be implemented. So merely having the service is not important. Knowing how to use it and knowing how to get feedback so you can keep improving upon yourself, I think, is the key.
Superb. And if you would explain a little more to me how, your journey from academia to private practice to, running a DSO, I mean, that's quite a career path. And during that time, what would have been some of like the biggest aha moments that you've had around dentistry as, a profession and, where it's going in the near future?
Sure. So, a lot of us have ambitions and aspirations in dental school, and I did as well. And my goal was to be a full-time faculty. And unfortunately for me, that didn't work out. So I had no choice, and I went into practice full-time. My first job was at a DSO in California. And at that time, there was a rather negative connotation around working for DSOs. But what I found was there wasn't really anything evil or bad about working for a DSO. It was all about the choices that I needed to make as a provider. So if I wanted to practice ethically, the DSO was supporting me. But if I choose to make rather incorrect decisions, then that was totally up to the individual. It wasn't really something that the company was, encouraging you to do. So it was that aha moment for me that, all this negative publicity really is not about the company. It's an individual decision. I went on from there to open my own offices and grow them and, become a bigger organization. And ironically, I saw the same thing in private practice. There were excellent practitioners that were very ethical, that always put, patient first, but there are always the outliers as well. So I think when it comes to the ethics of dentistry, it's not a company or an organization that drives that, but rather the individual's decision that drives it. And while I was in private practice, I became very involved in academia because that was my first love. And I was very fortunate that the American Association of Orthodontists took me under their wing and developed leadership skills and kind of exposed me to organized dentistry and how, dentistry works in unison with medicine and all the other healthcare industries. And I think that was the other aha moment, because as a private practitioner, you become so focused and tunnel visioned on your little practice that sometimes you forget what the bigger picture is, to step back and see that global view. That opportunity came because of the involvement with organized dentistry. So I would definitely encourage every dentist in one form or another to stay connected with their state societies or with their national professional organizations, because they will give you the truth. They will tell you the way it is. You may not like what they say, but at least you're getting the truth and not a marketing, flair to the information. And as I did that, a lot of my residents were looking for jobs. So I would reach out to other organizations and help them gain employment. Part of that involved reaching out to large DSOs and getting employment for our residents. So I've always stayed in touch with the DSOs. Eventually, as my offices grew, I got acquired myself. And at that point, I decided to join a DSO at a leadership level. And that experience, again, was very different because I was working with general dentists and I'm an orthodontist. And what I realized was there's a lot of bias on both ends. Dentists, general dentists, they really want to do the right thing, but they have not been given the education to make the right decisions. We don't teach orthodontics in dental school. They're being taught by vendors, which no matter how hard a vendor tries, there is bound to be bias in that education towards a certain product. And so I feel at this stage, it's really important that the academic community and the organized dentistry community comes together and trains and educates the dentists so they can make the right decisions. And as orthodontists, we must be collaborative with the general dentists. I think on an individual basis, in the dental community, we do really well. But sometimes when things get a little bigger, we tend to become very siloed in our mindsets. Yeah. And it's actually time to come together because at the end of the day, we are all dental providers. And by elevating each other, we are going to actually improve the standard of care. We are going to improve the quality of care that we are providing to our to the patients. And just it's good for, it's a win-win for everyone.
Right.
So that has really definitely impacted me, and being a part of different sub-units in dentistry, I'm hoping to bring everybody together. The women in DSO has played a very significant role in my life of late. I had never been exposed to such a collaborative group of very driven individuals. It was absolutely one of the best experiences I've had in my life. So I definitely want to continue supporting them and helping them and pulling women into leadership positions, because as we all know, the gender ratio in dental schools and residencies is tipping more towards female providers, and yet we are not seeing them take up leadership positions. And it's not so much about a woman has to be at every table, but it's more about let's represent and let's also do the work. Let's be part of this. Let's not be the ones receiving the results of the decision making, but instead be involved and contribute to that decision making. And that will make us better providers and better leaders. But at the end of the day, when all of this is put back together, we are all serving the patient. So anything we can do to improve that patient experience, whether it is through growing yourself as a leader, a clinician, a researcher, or it is about collaborating with your colleagues, or adopting technologies that can help elevate your practices. At the end of the day, we are all trying to do the same thing. We are trying to provide a higher standard of care and a better experience to the patient.
Well,
so that's the aha moment. It's all about the patient, everything that you do at the end of the day.
We cannot thank you enough for sharing your personal journey, and it's a really powerful one. I think too, hearing your, progress through life as a professional is really an important piece too. I know you were just talking a little bit about adopting technology and innovation. So maybe we can sort of, round things out there. I know you've probably had lots of opportunity to try different, technologies and software, both as a clinician and as a business leader. And it seems like, again, we're at a pace of like much faster adoption and emergence of new technologies in dentistry. can you just, what areas do you think are maybe ripe for some change and disruption in dentistry? And do you have like a particular approach to those types of innovations?
I do have some feedback on that. I think technology is going to play a very big role in dentistry going forward. I don't think that's we're not going to go back to the pre-COVID times. Technology will continue to evolve, and the dental practitioner will have to continue to adopt newer and better technologies. But while they are doing all of this, the one thing they cannot forget is the human factor. Unlike other industries outside of healthcare, where you can solely rely on technology for the complete interaction from A to Z, healthcare is very different because people come to us in suffering. And no matter how good your technology is, if you did not connect with that patient who is suffering, human to human, whether you're doing it via technology or you're doing it in person, unless we connect as human beings, we're almost providing a disservice to healthcare. Because healthcare is all about helping human beings and relieving their anxiety or pain. And in order to do that, you have to connect with them at an emotional level. So whenever you're practicing, whether it's in a DSO or in private practice or even in an academic institution, are you evaluating how the patient felt at the end of the appointment? Or are you just looking at the end result of your restorative treatment and patting yourself on the back? I don't think that is enough. I think as healthcare professionals, we have to dig deeper. We have to touch our patients at a very different emotional level. We must highlight our emotional quotient. We must learn ways to handle different personalities. And instead of just waiting on experience to teach us this, being more proactive and looking at it both qualitatively and quantitatively through various AI and survey, and there are multiple methods of evaluating that. I think that is going to differentiate an excellent provider from the rest of the world.
Super. Well, this has been kind of different and kind of extraordinary to share this time with you. And we thank you so very, very much for all the work you're doing with women in DSO and to, bridge the gap between orthodontists and general dentists in your various roles. Again, our gratitude and thank you for being on our show, Kind of Different.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It was my pleasure.